Academy Awards for Best Actor for Ian McKellen, Best Supporting Actress for Lynn Redgrave, and it won the Oscar for Best Screenplay Adaptation. And we were so proud of that because it was a little film, and it was kind of like the little engine that could, and it went all the way and got the gold. So we were really, really proud of that film. And of course, Bill Condon, the director, it really made his career take off. And since then, he wrote Chicago, which won the Oscar for Best Picture. He wrote and directed Dreamgirls, that won an Oscar for Jennifer Hudson. He directed the last two Twilight films that were the highest grossing of that franchise. He directed Disney's Beauty and the Beast, which grossed over $1 billion. And so he's had quite a career since then, and we've been so proud of him.
And you also had also a number of people that you had worked under you and went on to bigger and better things. Maybe you can just throw a few names out there that had worked under Tutelage under you.
Well, gosh, there's several that come to mind. One, I was doing a Showtime comedy sci-fi movie called Out There in 1995, and we had a lot of stars in it. Billy Campbell from The Rocketeer, and Rod Steiger again, Oscar winner, and a number of other stars in that film. But we had little cameo appearances, and there was one guy that I got introduced to at the commissary at the studio where we were shooting it, and he was doing a TV series called Hearts of Fire, with and it was shooting there at the same time we were doing our thing, and the producer knew him and said, why don't you have this guy play this little part of an eccentric guy that is in the jail cell when the main character gets thrown into jail overnight. He has to share the jail cell with him. So we put him in the movie. He was fantastic. He was a really smart guy, and he was telling us how in a few days his series was going on hiatus, and he was going to go off and make a film called Sling Blade.
Oh my gosh.
And yes, this guy turned out to be Billy Bob Thornton, and he started going into the character that he played in Sling Blade and the eccentric voice and everything, and we were like scratching our heads going, that sounds interesting, Billy Bob. Good luck with that. Becomes a big Oscar winner, totally launches his career, and he's just been going gangbusters ever since. So we got kind of in on the ground floor with him. Really nice guy, by the way. On Guilty as Charged, we had a young actress, Heather Graham, who's of course going on to do a lot of much bigger films. When I was teaching, sometimes when things are a little slow in directing, I'll teach courses at USC, at the University of Southern California, in their cinematic arts department. And about 5 years ago, I was teaching a student. It was a graduate course in directing, and it was his last semester before he got his graduate degree, and he graduated in May, right after I taught him. And then he went on to make an independent film that summer called Fruitvale Station that won Best Film at the Sundance Film Festival and won a big prize at the Cannes Film Festival. Got picked up and released in a big way in the art house market. Then his dad had indoctrinated him as he was growing up on all the Rocky movies.
Oh my!
And he got the idea to write a film called Creed, which he wrote and directed, and it won Sylvester Stallone an Oscar nomination, and a big comeback for him, a huge hit film. And then the guy's third movie is a little film called Black Panther that grossed over $1 billion. I'm talking about Ryan Coogler, who is
gosh,
one of the top directors in the business right now.
How do you like that? A former student who makes like, 3 big hit films, and of course Black Panther, which we saw. It was the best movie of the year when it came out, and Ryan Coogler, I mean, just amazing. And when you first met him as a student, it's like, was he just like, talkative, curious, shy, or what was his personality? Is willing to be taught or independent?
He was first of all, an incredibly nice guy. When it's easy to have 2020 hindsight, but he seriously really stood out. I really thought this kid is going somewhere, and because the short film that he was working on in our semester, I was really impressed with the actors that he had found. He was very diligent about finding, really good actors. Whereas some of the other students, would just have some of their friends be in it or whatever, who maybe weren't the best actors in the world. And he knew this was his opportunity. It was going to be his calling card. He really was very serious about finding the absolute best of everything to be in his film. And that's what got him. It's what helped him get his first feature going, because he had that to show. In fact, he showed that short film to Forrest Whitaker, who's a famous actor, and Whitaker also produces films, and he produced Fruitvale Station for him on the basis of having seen his short film. So it's those short films may not get seen by a lot of people, but they can, if they're seen by the right person, they can be a great calling card. It's certainly what happened to me when I did my short film. It was what enabled me to convince investors and all to do my first feature.
And of course, you being a teacher at USC as well too, and of course, having a lot of connections to Film Fest. What Film Fest do you recommend to your students to enter their work in?
Well, I think any film festival, the bigger ones like Sundance are much more competitive and harder to get into, and you'll be very lucky if you do get into that. I was very lucky, but it was also when Sundance was a little bit younger and not quite as competitive as it is now. So I think you just get your films entered in anything and everything and hope for the best. And the more people who see it, you just never know who's going to see it where. So, my advice is just to go for broke and go, enter it everywhere you can.
I think that's a great idea, too. And, of course, we'll get to a couple of your other ventures as well, too. You're listening to The Mike Wagner Show at themikewagnershow.com. Powered by Sonic Web Studios. Visit online at sonicwebstudios.com for all your needs. Looking for a professional website without breaking your budget? Sonic Web Studios is the answer. Sonic Web Studios offers fast, affordable custom web designs that blow the competition away. Call today at 1-800-303-3960. That's 1-800-303-3960. Or email to support@sonicwebstudios.com. Mention the Mike Wagner Show and get 10% off your first order. Sonic Web Studios. Take your image to the next level. Also, the Mike Wagner Show can be heard on the MikeWagnerShow.com. Also on Facebook at Facebook.com/The Mike Wagner Show. You can also download and listen on SoundCloud, Spreaker, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. We're here with producer, author, and director Sam Irvin, also a film teacher at University of Southern California. He directed a number of films like Guilty as Charged, Oblivion, Elvira's Haunted House, produced Gods and Monsters, and many more. And also, since you've had some of the success in the horror genre, you've also been a fan of Vincent Price and also associated with Little Shop of Horrors. You can tell us about the great Vincent Price and also Little Shop of Horrors and that association.
Well, Little Shop of Horrors is it's not an association with the film. It's actually the name of a magazine.
I was just getting to that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's a magazine on horror films that I've known the editor of it for many, many years, and he knew that I loved a particular Frankenstein film from the 70s that I saw as a kid. I was 17 years old, and it came on NBC as a 2-part Frankenstein film. It was called Frankenstein: The True Story, and it starred James Mason, Sir Ralph Richardson, Sir John Gielgud, Agnes Moorehead, David McCallum, Jane Seymour, Michael Sarrazin, Leonard Whiting, an incredible all-star cast. and it was the most expensive TV movie up to that time, the most expensive horror movie ever made up to that time, and it was really made a huge impression on me. And I back in those days when I was a teenager, I was editing and publishing a fanzine called Bizarre on horror films, and I put it on the cover of my magazine back then. And when I graduated from high school, I bamboozled my parents into sending me to England to interview all of my horror film favorites like Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing, and I was a big fan of the British Hammer Films, which was a studio that specialized in horror films, Frankensteins and Draculas and all of that. And but I had dinner and interviewed Jane Seymour, who had played the female creature in this Frankenstein film, and put that interview into my magazine. Well, the editor and publisher of this other magazine, Little Shop of Horrors, he knew of my love of that film. And a few years ago, he asked if I might want to write about it in his magazine. And I said, well, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it in a big way. Would you let me take over the whole magazine for an issue and guest edit it and do a whole issue on the making of that film? And he agreed. So I interviewed Jane Seymour a second time, 40 years to the month later.
Wow.
and David McCallum, who you all remember from The Man from U.N.C.L.E., and he plays Ducky on NCIS. And I interviewed him and about 20 other people who were still around, still alive from that production, and put together the issue. And I wrote, researched and did everything, found out all about the development and the production and wrote all about it. And I got Anne Rice to write the foreword for the magazine. And this was a film, one of her favorite films of all time. And it was the film that inspired her to write Interview with the Vampire, which launched her entire career as a writer, as this huge best-selling author. And so she wrote the foreword. I was so pleased about that. And the magazine came out last year, and it won a Rondo Award for Best Article of the Year. So I'm very, very proud about that. If you don't have to actually have even seen the film to enjoy the article and all the behind the scenes about it, because it's really an amazing story in and of itself. And if people are interested in getting a copy of that, they just go to www.littleshopofhorrors.com, and you spell shop the old-fashioned way, SHOPPE. So it's just littleshopofhorrors.com, and just look for the issue number 38 on Frankenstein: The True Story, and you'll find that.
That is amazing, too. And, of course, you're talking Little Shop of Horrors. For some reason, I'm still thinking of that 1960 classic starring Jack Nicholson making his debut. And what are your thoughts of Jack Nicholson being in a debut of all things in the Little Shop of Horrors? I remember watching it, and I remember his "Feed Me."
Yes, exactly. And then it became a huge Broadway sensation as a musical, and then they did another movie of it as a musical in the 1980s. And so that whole Little Shop of Horror franchise has been something else, I tell you.
What version did you like of Little Shop of Horrors? The original, or the first remake, or the second remake? Which one did you like the best?
Well, I like them both, and I saw it on Broadway many times. And Ellen Greene is just such an amazing actress who was in the Broadway show and the musical version. They were great. But I'm like you. I mean, I always think of Jack Nicholson in the original movie, and it was just such a hoot to go, to see him in such an early role. He was great.
And, of course, it's what more to come as well, what Jack Nicholson is about to become about. And, of course, you've also directed some comedy as well, too. You directed several episodes of Comedy Central Strip Mall starring Julie Brown, Cindy Williams, and Carolyn Hennessy and more. You can tell us some more about that and, why comedy? It sounds like a really interesting thing to take on.
Yeah, I love comedy, and I really like all genres. But the